Hello everyone, I hope you are all having a great day. I'm Saran.
And I'm Caroline Pumpkin. Thanks for joining us today for this panel discussion, which is in preparation for the DevOps Enterprise Summit in London, which takes place at the Intercontinental in London at the O2 on 25th and 26th of June.
I've been joined by a group of people who are experts and leaders who are helping to drive transformational change through DevOps.
Our goal for the next hour is a deep dive into some of the several topics that are top of mind for the IT community right now, and hopefully provide you with some food for thought to inform your own DevOps transformation.
Okay, to get started, I'm going to ask the panelists to briefly introduce themselves. Nicole, Jonathan?
Sure, I'll kick us off. Hi everyone, I'm Nicole Forsgren. I am CEO and Chief Scientist at DORA. I am co-author of the new book Accelerate, which I wrote with Gene Kim and Jez Humble. These two are author co-founders of DORA. We are investigators of the largest studies of DevOps, and so we help organizations understand how to drive excellence in their technology and digital transformation so they can become high performers.
Who's going to be next? In?
I go next, that's fine. Hi, everybody. I'm Goulding. I'm International CIO here at Aviva, an insurance company. I'm responsible for the tech teams across Europe and India. And I've spent quite a lot of my career in financial services, then in about 10 years in .coms, and now I'm back in financial services again, trying to bring agile ways of working to a large enterprise. And I've also written a couple of books called Flow, which is really about business agility.
Okay, Jonathan.
Hi, I'm Smart. I'm leading on ways of working at Barclays. Barclays is 80,000 people in 40 countries. We're 327 years old. For the last 3.5 years, we've been adopting more modern ways of working across the firm.
Great. Well, ComputerWeekly has been covering DevOps for a number of years. And I was looking at one of your articles, Caroline, about this 2017 State of DevOps report, which highlights some ways of communicated and visionary senior leadership and why these are important. And they're a must for agile software development to succeed within enterprises.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. It's a really interesting article and report from last year. I think because it really highlights how important having a collaborative, empathetic working environment is building high-performing DevOps teams. So I'm going to hand over to Nicole now, because she is one of the senior leads on the State of DevOps report. And just to pick your brains a little bit, Nicole, what are the factors and characteristics do you think high-performing DevOps teams share based on previous reports and research?
Sure. So the highest performers do the best at both speed and stability when we're talking about software delivery. So they can turn out code the fastest and the most stable, which I think is really important, because for years we thought that you would only get one. You know, for the longest time, we thought that in order to have quality software that was stable, you had to slow down. But we don't actually see that at all. Now, we also see that the highest performing teams have strong technical work. They have strong process. They also have a strong culture, right? We always talk about how culture is so important. One of the things that was my favorite out of the 2017 study is we see that by investing in good leadership, that helps support and amplify all of the rest of the work. And so if it's okay, I'll touch on those 5 dimensions really quickly, because it helps organizations understand how to support and invest in their leadership. And I will also mention that leadership doesn't only mean executives, although we do know executives are important. Anyone can be a leader. So these 5 dimensions are vision. You understand the direction of the team and the organization. Intellectual stimulation. You can challenge the team's status quo and you help challenge them to ask new directions. Inspirational communication. You can inspire pride in being a part of the team and inspire passion and motivation and encourage people to see that change brings new opportunities. I think that's especially important in technology, right? Because we're driving so many things to change so quickly. And this needs to be something that's exciting and not kind of this awful thing we have to trudge through. Another dimension is supportive leadership. The leaders need to consider everyone else's personal feelings before acting and be thoughtful of everyone's personal needs and their individual interests. And then finally, the 5th is personal recognition. We should commend the team for better than average work and acknowledge improvement in the quality of work. So those are some of my favorite things and kind of a quick overview.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nicole. Right, we're now, let's go and have a look at a video from last year's DOES 2017 conference. This features Jonathan Fletcher, who's CTO of insurance company Hiscox. Jonathan's speaking to ComputerWeekly's editor-in-chief, Brian Glick, about the challenges of becoming a cloud-first company and how that fits in and relates back to the DevOps adoption. So just bear with me a second while I swap screens, and I'm about to share with you a video. So we're just going to get that video up. Give me a second. It's harder when you're doing it live, but we're nearly there. Okay, I think I got it.
Hello, I'm Brian Glick. I'm the editor-in-chief of ComputerWeekly. We're here at the DevOps Enterprise Summit in London today, talking to some of the speakers here about some of the big issues, trends and technologies in the fast-growing field of DevOps. I'm joined now by Jonathan Fletcher. Jonathan is the Chief Technology Officer of the insurance company Hiscox. Jonathan, welcome. Thanks for coming on and joining us. You've just been talking to the audience here at the DevOps Enterprise Summit. Tell us a little bit about what you've been talking about.
So it's my second year at DevOps Enterprise Summit. It's really a continuation of our journey towards DevOps. Our focus in previous years has really been around the application side of delivery, so making faster, more predictable change. This year is more of a focus on the operational side of things. So it's the ops to the DevOps, and particularly with our move for our infrastructure teams move to Agile, and also our move to the cloud. With hope that once we start to use some of the same tooling, processes, cultural ideas between those two different camps, that actually sort of the magic of DevOps will happen, and there'll be a greater empathy and greater flow of change throughout our IT teams.
Interesting you talk there about getting the two teams to work together, getting the magic of DevOps to flow, as you put it. There's a nice phrase. I often hear people talk about this, that it's not about the technologies, it's not about the tools and processes, that cultural change is a big part of getting DevOps right. What's been the big challenge for you there, and how are you getting over that?
I think you're quite right. It's always a people and cultural issue. Some people, I think I put people in sort of three buckets. You sort of either people who really embrace that change, are really excited about it, those that need a bit of convincing, and some of them just ultimately are against it happening. So for me, I think many things that I've done wrong in terms of trying to change people's mindset was I kind of started off talking about the theoretical benefits and how it's going to change their jobs, and that doesn't get the reaction that you want. I think to get those naysayers and the people that are less excited about it doing some of it, once they get their hands on and actually involved with it, then that turnaround happens almost instantly. So I think my big learning point is less talking, more doing.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So if you were advising somebody who's back where you were when you started out on moving towards DevOps, if there was one piece of advice or one piece of best practice that you'd share with somebody at that starting point now, what do you think that would be?
I would say get someone that's done it. So we've learned loads of lessons throughout this 3-year journey. If someone can help you not make mistakes that we have along the way, it's value in making mistakes, it gives you context and you learn from it. But if you can shortcome some of those, then that's going to be great. So get some help. Don't feel that you're not going through something that someone else hasn't done before. So try and get their help.
There's a lot of advice out there these days as well. So that's good to know. Yeah. Jonathan Fletcher from Hiscox, thanks for coming and sharing some of your experiences on implementing DevOps. We've got plenty.
Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that video, and we're back. So, during its 18-month push to adopt agile working practices in all areas of its business.
Now we're a couple of years on from your first appearance at the DevOps Enterprise Summit, John. So I'm keen to sort of find out about maybe how that work's progressing now. You know, how far along the journey to full agile are you, and any sort of key lessons you've learned along the way?
Yeah, sure. So I think one lesson learned is that you're never done. You know, that you don't reach a point where you say, yeah, we've arrived, we're finished. It's a never ending of continuous improvement. You be better at getting better. My team and what we were doing, we were called the Agile Adoption Team, and our job was to increase organizational agility, and we would talk about it in those terms. And then, you know, what I've learned is that that's not really the right framing. It's really, we're not doing Agile for Agile's sake. We're doing it to get better business outcomes. Framing it in that context is a much better way to frame it. And so when I meet with senior leaders in the organization and I say, hey, hi, I'm here to help you deliver better business outcomes, that's a much different conversation to I'm here to make you adopt Agile. And you know, Agile and DevOps and Lean and design thinking, they're all tools in the toolbox to achieve good business outcomes. So me and my team now, we're now called the Better Value Sooner, Safer, Happier team. So you know, the tagline when I'm meeting with teams, with business teams or technology teams, it's better value sooner, safer, happier. And we can help you with that. And we can help you through the adoption of agile principles and practices and DevOps and Lean and design thinking and so on. A second at just looking at agility or DevOps in IT is a local optimization. It's enterprise-wide, and it's about flow, which I know is a topic that Finn is very keen on, having written a book with the topic flow. It is all about flow. It's about fast flow of value, fast feedback loops, and the problem could be in portfolio management. You know, it might not be in continuous integration, continuous delivery. It might be further upstream of that. It could be strategic planning. It could be financing. It could be human resources, human capital. So enterprise-wide agility is important. We've done a lot of work in non-IT context as enablers. And my third learning, I would say, is to make sure one's applying an agile mindset to the adoption of agility. So don't try and do it in a big bang manner. Don't do a capital A, capital T transformation. You know, make sure that you know, we try as much as possible to make sure that the federation of business units have autonomy, have purpose, have mastery, are empowered. And it's an outcome-oriented continuous transformation.
I know, that's really interesting, and it's interesting to hear how it's taken hold, you know, across the whole company, and how you've secured buy-in and engagement from the rest of the company as well. It's really interesting. So yeah, so turning our attention to Finn now, as we mentioned, Jonathan's spoken at the summit a couple of times now, but am I right in thinking it's your first time? And if so, what can attendees expect you to be talking about? Okay, great.
Yes, I'm a first-time person at the DevOps Summit, and I'm really looking forward to it because I'm actually a bit of a DevOps fanboy, really, on the sort of quiet. I first got involved, you know, when I heard about the DevOps sort of days in Belgium, and so it just occurred to me this seemed like common sense. And so my talk is really, as John said, about flow, how work flows throughout the organization, right from kind of like extending agile ways to the business and to customers as well. and trying to get away from some of the jargon that we use. But I will be talking at the summit about some of the lean software development techniques we use, continuous deployment, things I've done with DevOps in the past, some of the struggles in actually implementing it within large enterprises, but also how I'm using and have used for a number of years now, visualizations, extreme transparency, great social interactions with team members. And actually all of this sits within what I call Flow, the framework. And I try to emphasize much more of the fun aspects of this and taking the pain out of everybody's day-to-day activities and getting stuff done that's of value and actually trying to get everybody to be as happy as John's team, which I wish we were, but we're on the journey.
Brilliant. No, it sounds like there'll be plenty for attendees to take away from that. So no, thanks for giving us a sneak preview.
I guess it's my turn now. We're going to move on the discussion a bit to cover a few hot topics in the world of DevOps and technology and generally, and ask the panel for their take on them. So we're going to start with the contentious matter of GDPR. So this is a question for you, Jonathan. Did the preparation for GDPR pose any challenges for Barclays and its agile DevOps ambitions?
So we have developed a way to continuously engage with our governance, risk and control subject matter experts. And this is something that I've spoken about at the DevOps Enterprise Summit for the last 2 years. And to the point around organization agility and flow, we found them where we were engaging our GRC, our governance, risk and control, including things like data privacy and GDPR, our specialists, we were historically engaging them right at the beginning and right at the end and not in the middle. And that's a traditional waterfall type approach. And what we were finding is, not surprisingly, a lot of rewind in a traditional approach. Like we thought actually 6 months more requirements emerged for the theoretical go live, taking a tradition. And again, context is because not every governance, risk and control requirement is applicable in every single case. If someone is developing a restaurant menu application internally for the bank for a restaurant, it doesn't have the same risk and control requirements as a payments processing system that is internet facing or has a lot of client data. So the solution needs to, and we spend a lot of time on this because this has been one of our big impediments to flow. And it's got, the word tribe has got nothing to do with the Spotify, the not Spotify model. It has nothing to do with that, for clarity. And control means GRC. And we also believe it isn't a case of starting with automating everything. Yes, we are automating a lot of stuff and we're shifting left a lot of stuff and trying to automate it. However, again, thing that's developed changed the way that we work with our governance, risk and control subject matter experts in the bank to be continuous. We have little, early and often conversation based on quarterly business outcomes, based on the level of risk, based on the level of engagement that's needed. And that level of engagement could be none. And based on that, we have a menu of risk stories. And one of those risk stories, for example, will be around GDPR, one or more of them. And your data privacy expert in regular in your Jira backlog or whatever tool you're using. So then the work is where the work is, instead of being in a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint document or an Excel sheet somewhere else. A lot of kind of time and effort into this this thing that was a constraint for us. So to answer your question, no, GDPR was not didn't slow down Agile or our DevOps aspirations or progress.
Okay, well, thank you, Jonathan. And what about you, Finn? And what's been your experiences of GDPR?
Sorry, I've lost. Sorry, was that a question for me?
Oh, no, sorry. I just asked a question. Well, thank you very much for your answer, Jonathan. I just asked a question to Finn. What was your experience, Finn, of GDPR?
Yeah, I was just saying it's a pretty vital program for customers. So it's something that we invested a lot of time and effort into. But for me, I think the thing I took the most out of it, which was the greatest fun, was to try and see how we could use Agile techniques and ways of working with a wider group of people. Because within the program, you have people from human resources, from finance, from risk and control, etc., that may not interact on a daily basis as far as software development is concerned. But this program, we used many transparent techniques in terms of daily stand-ups. We used post-it notes for the first time with people that never seen them before and were kind of, they thought the way of prioritizing was quite novel and interesting. And we also used minimal viable product techniques, the MVP approach, not necessarily to de-scope anything, but to prioritize the most important things first, because the natural human reaction is to do all the easy stuff. It's a big program, so we show them how to make big things into manageable chunks, how to make them flow through the system. And actually, it was, from my perspective, a great social interaction with our colleagues. And now I'm seeing stand-ups that have nothing to do with software development occurring around the office, around topics that people are doing in their day-to-day activities, which is fantastic.
Brilliant. Okay. Okay, I was going to ask Nicole, if we sort of expand a bit further to be sort of in a more general way, Nicole, what kind of challenges do DORA's clients commonly run into while trying to balance the needs to hit various security, regulatory, and compliance deadlines while executing DevOps in a transformational way?
You know, I loved that GDPR came up recently, right? Because it really focused everyone on this large regulatory standard that everyone had to respond to. Because so often I talk about how important it is that we can develop and deliver software with both speed and stability. And so often people say, oh, well, that's not me. Or banks will say, oh, well, this only applies to me. I can't be a high performer because I have to deal with so many compliance and regulatory standards. And GDPR came up and suddenly the whole world had to respond. And it was really interesting because some of my my Twitter feed is primarily tech. And everyone's talking about GDPR, but a handful of my Twitter is not tech. And one or two people said, what is happening? The world is coming to an end. All of a sudden my inbox is full of privacy emails. And we were all like, it's GDPR, it's fine, right? But it was this really interesting opportunity for, as Finn just mentioned, everyone to really kind of come together and implement many of these policies on a slightly broader base where you might not necessarily do it all the time because you don't have this opportunity. And I also love what John said about how in some ways this should be sort of standard, right? We should always be shifting left. We talk about, DevOps circles, we talk about building quality in. That's the same thing with security, right? Security is a quality component. We should build security in. And so with many of our customers, we're seeing this take a bigger role now because we are seeing so many more compliance and regulatory and security stances take place. And we're seeing that high performers spend 50% less time having to deal with responses and remediation and quality fallback if they are following strong practices.
No, that's really interesting because I think sometimes people think the fast pace of innovation comes at security has to come at the expense of that. So no, it's interesting you spoke to that. So I'm going to move the topic of discussion on a little bit further now. And apologies, Nicole, I'm going to make you talk again because I want to pick your brains on a topic I know you've spoken extensively at DevOps conferences about, and that's how do you measure kind of the success of the DevOps initiative within an organization? I know it's something our readers want to know about and often ask about, because it's, it's how do you know it's going well? I think that's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm. And I love this question, right? So I'm a measurement nerd, I'm a tech nerd, so this is always my favorite. I think some of the things, if we talk about guidelines and principles to think about, there are a couple things to always keep in mind. The first is to focus on global measures and not local measures, which I know John and Finn have both talked about. And the second is to think about outcomes and not outputs, which I know both the other speakers have also talked about already, right? Because it's about delivering value to your organization, to your team, to the stakeholder, right? Because that's what we want to do, is we want it to deliver value. And again, global, because we don't want to be creating local optimizations that can end up hurting us in the end. So a good example for us when we do a bunch of our research in the State of DevOps report is software development and delivery. And so this is the ability to develop and deliver software with both speed and stability. We use this because it's global. It focuses on dev all the way through IT operations and prod. So that's global, right? It's several teams working together to deliver a product that creates value. And it's an outcome. It's what happens at the end. It's not just an output. It's not lines of code. It's not story points. It's not something tiny that you could maybe end up focusing on and then gaming that one metric, because all the teams have to work together and have to focus together. And so the other nice thing that we see about this metric in particular is, as I mentioned previously, speed and stability do move together, particularly among high performers. And that's what helps us drive good organizational outcomes. And I mean outcomes along several different factors: commercial measures, profitability, productivity, and market share, as well as non-commercial measures, things like effectiveness, efficiency, and customer satisfaction. And we see that high performers are twice as likely to meet or exceed their commercial and non-commercial measures.
Okay, no, thanks for that. So I'm going to shift over to Finn now, just to get your take, really. In terms of, in the context of what Nicole said, is that an approach you've typically taken, or have you got other ways you favour of measuring how DevOps is progressing in the organisations you've worked for?
Yeah, it's a real tricky one, because in my early career working at lastminute.com and Travelocity, these are things that we just did. It wasn't necessarily called DevOps. It was just we were small and we were trying to get things done in an efficient way. And as you move into other companies, you start to potentially have to justify and have a return on investment, etc. But I've always kept it simple. I mean, the things that I like are lead time and cycle time. These are things when a task is actually created to the minute it's given to somebody, and then somebody actually does some work and delivers it. Those things, if you've got value coming in, your work has been prioritized in a value-based method, then what you're looking at is how quickly can I get these things assigned to somebody, and how quickly can they get them done. Some companies have cycle times that are measured in months, and the more nimble startups would be measured in hours. So the faster you can get down to that kind of cadence, the more value you're delivering quickly. So why do you have to come up with a lot of justification for setting this team up? I just think DevOps is just common sense. It's like, I tend to put my underwear on and then my trousers, not the other way around. It's just the way it is, And I just don't see how people can actually say that holistic teams is not a great idea. And the world is moving on now, where we're actually trying to extend this concept to business and security and all other aspects of getting stuff done, so that the flow of work is quick. And so that's what I look at. But I only ever care about those two measures and nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Jonathan, as keen to know, as we talked about already, the agile Barclays is company-wide. Does that pose any challenges for how you measure how the DevOps, how your embracing of agile is going across the company? Do you have to alter your approach between different departments and things like that?
No, we're not. We're taking a consistent approach across the organisation, and we're measuring. I mentioned that the name of our central centre of enablement is, we are the better value, sooner, safer, happier team, and our tagline is better value, sooner, safer, happier, and that's exactly what we're measuring. We're measuring better, we're measuring value, we're measuring sooner, we're measuring safer, and we're measuring happier. And those are all outcomes, to Nicole's point. They're not outputs. They're not how agile are you. They're not, are you agile fluency level 4? They are outcomes. And so specifically what we measure for better, we measure incidents in production. We measure customer impacting incidents. For value, we're using an OKR type philosophy, objectives and key results. And value is unique. Value could be revenue, it could be market share, it could be customer satisfaction, it could be corporate citizenship. And so there's no one measure for value. And we're using OKRs, objectives and key results, which are quarterly, and they have the KR bit is the key result. It has the value articulated in the OKR. So we then do a kind of a benefits management cadence around looking at the leading and the lagging indicators around the KRs. Did we achieve, and that feeds into the next quarter, it's quarterly rolling wave of planning. Oh, are we on the right track or are we not? In terms of sooner, these are the flow measures. So this is where we're measuring lead time, we're measuring cycle times, we're measuring release cadence, we're measuring, in some cases, flow efficiency. And for me, flow efficiency is really where it's all at. What percentage of time is work waiting versus what percentage of time is work being worked on? In most large companies, the flow efficiency is just 10%. So 90% of the time, work is sitting there idle. And that's shocking. But we don't visualize it enough. We can't see it when it's knowledge work. So we need to be able to see it. Safer is around compliance. So that's GRC. As a heavily regulated, in a heavily regulated industry, we have to be compliant. And obviously, financial services is all about trust, first of all, trust with your money. And then happier. So we're measuring both customer and colleague net promoter scores. We run a survey internally every 6 months. So in terms of higher levels of engagement with colleagues, is it a better way of working? Is it more humane? And it is. Every year we've got the highest ever engagement scores. And we've also seen a significant drop in customer impacting incidents in the last year. So that's how we measure it across the board.
Oh, sorry. The best thing about being a co-host is you get a nudge when it's your turn. So, everyone, here we are. I was going to, we're going to move topics a little bit more. DevOps is renowned for enabling organizations to launch software-powered initiatives very quickly. So that you hear about DevOps being used to power sort of digitization projects, run A/B tests, and adapt. So you have a feedback loop, and you can adapt, look at customer feedback, look at customer experience, and then make the project, make the software better. So I wanted to ask the panel of their experiences in maintaining almost like a pace of innovation, an innovation lifecycle, while keeping the teams working on the projects and probably focused on the projects, and similarly making sure that the stakeholders remain engaged. Okay, so I'm going to start with Finn, if I may. What's your experience of that, about sort of keeping both the stakeholders and the people on the project teams really focused on what they have to achieve?
Right. Hopefully the teams are working on things which are providing value, even if it's fixing technical debt or things which you have to do. But from an innovation perspective, new ideas are king, particularly in the .com world. And I was at lastminute.com, that's all we ever cared about was new ideas. So we were doing hack days back in 2006. And nowadays, people do these to try and get ideas. And I think that's a bit of a mistake, really, because we always did it partly for ideas, but also partly to get people to collaborate and have some fun together, and actually, people from different teams working on a problem together and having a bit of fun. But essentially, using some of the techniques that we've been talking about today, when you have that DevOps approach where you can do test and learn, or we like to call it pivoting quickly. We don't fail fast. We don't prefer to do that. But what you're doing is trying to get a way of testing your ideas quickly on customers. And so why not bring a customer in and talk to a customer straight off the street? And if you do some design thinking, techniques, that's exactly what you would do, and bring customers in, not necessarily a focus day, but just to talk about what your ideas are and demonstrate some stuff. And it can be quite liberating for people that never meet customers in a delivery perspective, face to face. And some of the other techniques is to use something like lean startup within your organization to show how your staff can bring an idea to the fore using the same techniques the startup would use. And so what you find is a little bit healthy competition amongst people trying to get their ideas brought into the process, into the backlog, get them funded. And so, we actually think that part of that is just the good social interaction, the way that teams work, but also extending their ideas perhaps to the community. So doing hackathons with other companies, which is also good fun. And as I say, trying to potentially work with some startups and some, in an accelerator context, getting other people to rub ideas off with your people. And it's all, I keep saying it should be fun, but I do actually believe it should be fun and that you'd want to do it. And then people are given time to actually collaborate. And when we do that quite a lot, we do let people collaborate. We're not like fiercely expecting software engineers to work 10 hours a day delivering stuff. That's the old world. As long as everyone's doing value-based delivery and they're getting the opportunity to work with customers, I think that's pretty key for us.
Thank you, Finn. Looking at Barclays, we wrote about it in 2016. So, Jonathan, you've been this move to DevOps and Agile. It's been a number of years, and I wanted to ask you if you've had sort of similar experiences. Have you used things like, as Finn mentioned, the hackathons, engaging like customers and things like that to keep the project people motivated? So, Jonathan, what's been your experience?
Yes, we run hackathons. Yes, we do a lot of work with customer focus groups and customer testing with customer experience labs. And I find the question to be the question's an interesting one. So it ceases to become those that are being innovative and those that are not being innovative, and it starts to become everybody innovating all of the time. And what I mean by that is we're pursuing continuous everything. Everything's continuous, and we've pivoted from primarily being project based to primarily being product based, where those products stroke platforms stroke services are value streams. So for example, a value stream might be applying for a mortgage to buy a house. A value stream might be opening a credit card account, opening a checking account. And those are long-lived value streams. And what we've done is we have identified and we pivoted from projects to products to value streams. And our people are long-lived on long-lived products. And then you build in innovation into your long-lived product. So rather than building, the downside to a primarily project-oriented organization is a tendency to keep building stuff. New project, new build, new project, new build, new project, new build. And then you don't tend to do gardening on the stuff you've built previously. So then the weeds start to grow and you have to go back and you have to kind of slash and burn what you built previously because it's now so out of date and you've got so much technical debt that you get into this vicious cycle of slash and burn, build new, slash and burn, build new. So instead, in terms of innovation, we expect, and also everyone being oriented around the customer. No longer are you just putting a pedal on a bicycle on an assembly line, not knowing why the customer wants a bicycle. Now you understand actually the unarticulated needs of the customer because you're on a long-lived value stream with long-lived products, and you realize they don't want a bicycle at all. Actually, they want a motorbike, or they want a car, or they want a train ticket. So that's where we're trying to get to, continuous everything. We're now getting to the point of emergent architecture on long-lived products with long-lived teams. And one other further point to add to this is there's exploit and explore. There's exploiting your current business models, and there's continuous innovation, incremental innovation, and then there's disruptive innovation. So, and for disruptive innovation with fintech, with venture capital funding, so we try to do both, and both exploit and explore. We sponsor 220 fintech firms. We've got 7 incubator offices, labs globally. So we invest in and sponsor fintech firms to disrupt our own business model, as well as continuing to innovate on our current business model.
Thank you, Jonathan. I thought it was quite interesting that what you mentioned around the whole sort of looking at the customer who initially had a bicycle and then they wanted a motorbike or whatever. It's really amazing. Nicole, I wanted to ask you, how does DORA advise its clients to address this matter in their organizations?
Sure. So I think I'll refer to a previous question, right? So we talked about measurement and how that's so important. And what I think is also really important is making sure that we're making the right investments and we're making the right products, right? I love the shift that we're seeing throughout the industry now to products over projects. Ronnie Kohavi is at Microsoft now, and he told, he strongly advised them to measure what they were doing. And for years, Microsoft said, no, we know what we're doing. We have a very, very mature product and we really understand our customers well. They took his advice and they found that only 1/3 of well-designed, well-architected, carefully thought out features among their most mature products and their most mature customers were actually delivering value and were actually successful. And so I think what's really important is that we make sure we have some measurement in place so that we can pivot quickly, right? I love that point earlier. So we can pivot quickly and we can capture signal from our customers very, very quickly so that we can deliver value, make smart investments in what it is that we're building so we can capture that value quickly. Now, what we've seen is that the ability to do lean product development and agile product development drives not just organizational performance, but it also creates this fantastic culture and even decreases burnout. And earlier you also asked about doing things like A/B testing. We've found that having a strong, mature pipeline and ability to develop and deliver software helps drive this as well, because it does allow us to pivot really, really quickly. And there are a few key components that help contribute to this. So one is how well teams can slice up products and features into small batches and do MVPs, right? So Finn talked about this, being able to do MVPs, optimizing for flow, again, so we can move quickly. Another is how well teams have an understanding of that flow from the business all the way through, right? So John also talked about how we're dealing with knowledge work. We're dealing with an invisible set of work that we're dealing with, right? Our inventory, we can't see. And so helping our experts, helping our software engineers, helping our IT operations professionals see what the work is a huge contributing factor to success here. A third is whether organizations actively and regularly seek customer feedback, which is interesting because it seems obvious, but so many organizations don't do this. Or if they do, they don't make this process transparent to the engineers. So maybe you have the engineers talk to customers themselves, which was also brought up previously, or at least make that a very, very transparent process so they know why they're building what they're building. And then finally, whether development teams have the authority to create and change kind of specifications and do some experiments themselves. They are the experts. Also, they're very smart, right? We work with fantastically smart, capable, wonderful people. Let's give them some authority to do some great, exciting, innovative work, which I know, both of my other fantastic co-panelists have talked about.
Thank you, Nicole. Smart.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, conscious of time, but we've got one final question, which I know is something a lot of our readers are sort of keen to find out from the panel about, which is on the topic of blameless post-mortems, which can be hugely educational and beneficial to organisations going through a DevOps transformation. But there's an art to getting them right and ensuring you get the most out of them. So I'm going to quickly hand over to Finn and just ask you, Finn, do you favour blameless post-mortems, and if so, have you got any top tips for our readers about how best to go about getting the most out of them?
Okay. Well, first of all, I hate the expression post-mortem. Just sounds like something terrible. And in fact, retrospectives should be something that you learn from and you value. You take that into your next objective, your next program or product development. Particularly, I like teams that are doing retrospectives every week. Like, you don't need an excuse, just doing what worked well, who helped me, etc. But if something does go wrong, We use techniques in my previous roles at Paddy Power, and are using them now. It's like to do stuff which is like the lean retrospective. So in other words, we use this particular quote that's the retrospective directive, which actually talks about no one really set off on this initiative to break anything or to do something bad. So what should we stop doing? What should we start doing? What should we continue doing? And grouping things in that manner. And for a small team, that works quite well. But my most favorite technique is very visual. I'm a very visual person, and I like using the lean sailboat technique. I know we've seen this before, but you draw the outline of a sailboat. And with the teams, it works very well if there's a very sort of like heated debate that's going on, because the whole thing actually turns into a bit of fun. So you kind of say, what was propelling us along? What was blowing us, forward? And people post-it notes on the wind. Where were we going? What was the sun? So what were the objectives? And people post-it notes there. What obstacles did we sort of see on the way? And these would be rocks, and we put post-it notes on what those rocks would be. What held us back, which would be anchors. What were unexpected things? And that might be sharks, which are actually in the sea. Which sharks came along and maybe took people away from us or something from the project, and that's why things went wrong. Or were we sort of like attacked by pirates? Who were the pirates that were trying to, from outside, let's say, that are trying to do something to this program? It all sounds like daft, but believe me, it takes a very, very big, fractious, like heated project issue that's gone wrong. Using this technique takes it to a really nice space of people trying to learn, have a bit of fun. Oh, I've got another pirate. Oh, I've got another shark. And it actually does work well for learning. And then using that technique, as I say, all those things that you learn, take them to the next program and try and avoid making those issues going forward.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I know to diffuse some of the tension from the kind of discussions is really, really important. And Jonathan, just throwing over the question to you, have you got any advice about how you approach this at Barclays?
So I agree with everything that Finn just said. The kind of the retrospective starts. Is continuous improvement becomes baked into your culture, and it doesn't become about I have similar feelings to Finn. I don't like the term. It's not a post-mortem like something's dead. It's continuous improvement as to how can we continually improve. And I also loved John Allspor's talk at the DevOps Enterprise Summit in San Francisco last year. And to quote John Allspor, incidents are unplanned investments. So whether you like it or not, an incident is an unplanned investment. It's a forced investment for companies. So you better understand what's going on. And there's, this is a massive body of research here. This is a huge topic around safety. The 5 whys is limited. It's not enough. With increased complexity, there isn't one root cause. You can't ask why 5 times and get a root cause. There is not one root cause. It's not one human flicking off a power off switch in a data center, which actually happened once. Like the cleaner tripping the power switch. It's not the cleaner's fault. It's the system's fault for allowing that to happen. So I think also it's thinking that failure is inevitable. So in the past, we tried to avoid failure. Now we don't try to avoid failure. We recognize that failure is inevitable, and it is about trying to cope gracefully with that failure. And so something that the language we're using at the moment in the firm is quality engineering. And within quality engineering, we're including chaos engineering. So, taking a leaf out of Netflix's book, and the Simian Army is actually, let's try to create, and we're not calling it chaos engineering, but quality engineering, we can actually simulate failures and check from an engineering perspective, the graceful handling of failure when it will happen, and it will, has a minimal impact.
Okay, yeah, interesting. Okay, so I'm going to referring back now to something sort of Finn talked about the importance of maybe not just holding these kind of retrospectives when something's gone wrong. So Nicole, why would you say it is important for DevOps leaders to constantly be taking stock of how things are going, rather than just like, oh no, something's gone wrong, let's find out why?
Yeah, I love using these as opportunities to learn. Another idea that we sometimes recommend, that I'm seeing more and more companies do, is use them as opportunities to plan. Right, and some people call them, again, I don't love the term post-mortems, but if we flip that and use it as a pre-mortem, you can use them ahead of a project and ask questions like, have you considered what might happen if this happens? You can say things like, okay, what assumptions might go wrong? What mistakes could we make? What would go wrong? What would be the worst thing that could happen? And then you can plan ahead, assuming that things are going to go wrong, right? Just like John just said, failure is inevitable. We work in highly complex systems in high-risk areas. And so if we sit and we have someone play devil's advocate, now, I will definitely point out, this does not give someone an excuse to be a jerk, right? This doesn't say that you get to come back later and say, see, I told you so, or have someone just be, a jerk in a room. But it gives you really interesting opportunities to say ahead of the time, ahead of the project, really carve out a little bit of time to sit down and actually actively look for things that could go wrong. And it helps you identify blind spots that you might not see ahead of time or that you might not see otherwise.
Yeah, so there's definitely, let's say, value to be had in doing. No, brilliant. Thanks for that. It's interesting.
Tell you what, though, I've learned a lot of new terminology today. Well, first, don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Well, don't
Hopefully that's standard across the board.
But I love the term quality engineering as well. That's so, it's so much nicer than saying something like quality assurance. It means that you're engineering quality into your products. Anyway, I just want to thank the team and the panel so much for their great insights today. It's been absolutely fascinating. Really, really, thank you so much, Finn. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Nicole, for taking the time today to speak to us, and enlighten us in the art of DevOps.
Yeah, we'll be there on Computer Weekly. We'll be there at the show. So on the 25th and 26th of June at the DevOps Enterprise Summit. So if you see us, please come and say hello.
And be on the lookout for more updates. And I'll read this website out to you. It's events.itrevolution.com. Thanks for watching.
And also just a shout out as well for the next State of DevOps report survey. You can check it out on Nicole's Twitter feed.
Yes, thanks so much. We're collecting data right now, and we are digging into things like cloud and platform and database and security. So if anyone has about 20 minutes, I will love you forever. And the results will be coming out this fall and shared at DevOps Enterprise Summit, Las Vegas.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.